Hey guys, I saw Sydney the Fairy Princess and Oppenheimer in this video, and I'm going to go into a detailed review of both these films, and I'll tell you by the end which one I think is better. So yeah, please subscribe. This video is probably my longest basic review yet. This took a while to make, so yeah, let's get into it. Okay, I'm gonna start by covering Barbie first. Spoiler warning, I'll be covering the general themes of the film, what the villains are like, so if you want to go in blind, just don't watch this part, but I'm not gonna be spoiling anything that big. So let's just get this out of the way. Barbie is really funny. I was like in a completely silent theater, or maybe Deedham was too loud next to me to hear a single audience reaction, but I feel like the comedy in this movie was literally designed for me. Like every joke was at least slightly funny. I can't think of a single cheap joke or unfunny lazy joke. Every single joke worked. For me, the only jokes I didn't laugh at or smile at were the ones in the trailer, which coincidentally were the only jokes people actually laughed at in the theater. The beach off scene is still amazing though. That still makes me laugh. How do you get better than that? Like when your first scene is a shot-for-shot recreation of 2001, you know your movie is gonna be an S-tier comedy film. It's so funny to think that the baby from 2001 is basically just a giant Barbie doll in this universe. I'll talk about it later, but basically the existence of the CEO characters are perfect. I absolutely love his extremely sexist speech. It's incredible. And the line, "All men here love women and I have Jewish friends," are some of the funniest possible lines in anything I've ever seen. I love the scene where Barbie's running away from the CEO people and they get stumped because they have to use a key card to get through. This movie's comedy does not take itself seriously ever, and it's something similar to Megamind where you're not supposed to actually think about none of this makes sense. It's just completely random, unexpected comedy, which is basically targeted directly at me. Also, I will get into it more later, but when the Kens take over, basically every line they have is close to as perfect as you can get. When Ryan Gosling is selling an alpha male course, I lost it. I knew it was coming based on what the movie was building up to, but I didn't expect him to be a basically direct copy of Andrew Tate. During the last third of the movie, the comedy just goes off the wall with the amazing fourth wall jokes where the narrator calls out Margot Robbie inside the movie. It also works really well because the absurdity of it all is just something that's part of this universe. Everyone just accepts that there's a Barbie world out there. You can just roller skate to it, it doesn't matter, and good god it works because they don't have to explain the adult jokes or the darker jokes. All of it works, and it's joke after joke after joke, and every single one lands. Comedy for me is easily the strongest part. I mean, they literally said the creator of Barbie commits tax fraud. How do you get better than that? It really carries the film from distracting me from the actual issues. There probably are issues with the film, but like, I guess other critics can pick up on that, but when I'm laughing this hard, I really could care less. Also, the best joke was the one with the Godfather, because that's literally just the average Letterboxd user. For me, there's just one issue that I had with the film, and I think there's kind of a lack of emotion here. I know there are emotional scenes, but they really don't work on me, and I'm not sure if they were effective on other people. But the comedy is so strong and effective here that I think when we cut to an emotional scene, they really just don't work on me at all. But maybe on a rewatch, where it probably won't be as funny, the emotional scenes will work on me. I do really like the scene with the woman on the old bench, though they cut to that after a pretty standard dialogue scene between her and Ken, so it wasn't that much of a tone shift, but I do think the mother-daughter relationship of the story was pretty good. I wasn't super invested in it. It was good, and I enjoyed it for that. The main issue with the emotion in this film is the ending. I like the ending, it's good, but it's not emotional in the slightest for me. When Barbie goes into like that white void, we get all this emotional stuff getting thrown at me and none of it's working, just because of how the film was building up to it with all the tons of jokes right before it happened. I feel like I should have just mentioned it here, even though it's not that big of an issue for me. I just thought that, I should have a couple issues with the film before I just keep on praising it. Yeah, so just like every single person ever, Ryan Gosling is the best part about the film, as he is basically the best part about literally any movie he's ever in. Yes, he absolutely kills the role of Ken. He's basically perfect, and almost every single line he delivers somehow makes me laugh. For the first 30 minutes, I love his scene where he decides his job is beach, and I love his interactions with Barbie, and yes, the beach I've seen is the greatest thing to ever come out of mankind. But then it just goes higher from there. Once we get to the real world, Ken becomes sexist. The movie just basically peaks. I absolutely love how goofy he becomes with another 2001 reference, with incredible lines like "Men rule the world," and him creating an entire patriarchy on horses and becoming the greatest thing to ever come out of cinema. The other Kens are great too, and everything Ryan Gosling does is funny. The Shablam line is absolutely hilarious and one of the funniest jokes in the movie for me. His song, "I'm Just Ken," is beautiful, and when he finally stops watching Ben Shapiro at the end, his shirt, I need to buy this shirt. Also, all his interviews are incredible. Thank you, Ryan Gosling, for once again changing the world for the better.
They don't stop Kenny.
Okay, one last thing. I'm going to cover the feminism and why it's extremely good and everyone needs to stop complaining about it. The film, despite everything, is still kind of targeted at a younger audience, and they're telling the younger audience watching that the real world ain't so great and it's not going to be fair. And I think that's a really, really good thing, despite what everyone is saying about it being woke or whatever. Also, everything about it is extremely over-exaggerated, which is the point. Over-exaggerating things is a way to get your point across, and the movie does it perfectly with Ken and the CEO. I think it's incredible and it's hilarious how goofy and over the top the movie goes on with the message. If the entire film is extremely over the top and goofy, I don't know why you would have a problem with the message also being really, really over the top and in your face when the entire movie is like that. I said in my bad She-Hulk video, don't watch it, that I don't like the angle it went for being Ant-Man, which was not a very good complaint. Just don't watch that video, it's kind of a mess. But in She-Hulk, it's a crucial part of the story and they use it to ruin other characters from pre-existing properties. But in Barbie, it's just Ken, and who actually cares about Ken? Exactly, not a single person cares about Ken. Who cares that they changed him? And if you've been paying attention, I think they changed him very much for the better. I think the part where they tell all the brainwashed Barbies about how unfair the world is kind of a little bit too much in the face to find it funny, but it's still pretty funny. I like Alan. It was basically executed perfectly, the best it could be for me. I think it's one of the best executions of a message like this I've seen, and it's also a way to make the story feel more grounded when explaining how Barbie and Ken were able to get out of like so many situations that they shouldn't have been able to. And yeah, that's basically what I have to say about Barbie. Anyways, moving on to Bomb Man.
Bombs?
So I'll start with what a lot of people have been saying about this movie, and it's obviously the incredible editing for this film. It was very easily the best part about the film, and the best part about the editing specifically was actually the sound editing for me. This is very easily the best sound editing of the year. There's just something super cool about the tension and hype that the sound editing in this film causes. I think my theater lowered some of the audio because some of it felt off, and everyone is talking about how loud this movie was, so it was probably way louder in other theaters. But the explosion scene is easily the best scene in the film because of the build-up and the absolute silence for 2 minutes before cutting with this like ear-destroying sound that you see coming but you just don't expect to be that effective. This movie is basically kind of screaming at you. And there's a couple of other extremely loud moments, like the stepping of the feet, which was very similar to the nuke being ready to launch. It's used several times throughout the film, and they're all great and used extremely well. There's also another part where Opie gives his speech and all the audio around him cuts out and we just see him talking with the audience reactions being silent, which is also the second best scene in the film because of how creative it was and how impactful and loud it felt. I'm kind of mixed about the start where there's random cuts to bombs and flashes of fire. They're a little bit strange and out of place, but they still get the point across very easily and they're really good. The color grading in this film is also stunning. The flashes of explosions are beautiful and the actual color grading of the pure black sky with extreme reds bursting through it is really stunning to look at. There's also parts that are in black and white which really help, and even though later in the film I don't fully get what the movie is saying, I appreciate them using the black and white, so it's really easy to see whose perspective it is we're looking through. There are some really impressive smash cuts, like when Opie's teaching a classroom with one kid in it and then it turns around and there's an entire classroom. It's really clean and super well done. So yeah, that's the editing. It's very easily the best part about the film. It should win best editing at the Oscars as of now, and if at least get nominated for sound mixing or something. Okay, so the dialogue in this is something I'm kind of mixed on. There are some great lines in this film and so many quotable great moments, like basically any scene with Opie and the general. The acting is also great. I don't know how to say his name, but Cillian Murphy was great as Oppenheimer, and they really sell some of the lines. Some moments in the film with the dialogue are really nice, like everyone calling him Opie, which is still really funny to me, but it's also really sweet. There's also some really snappy, fast dialogue in this film where it's back and forth and extremely hard to follow, but it's really well written. There's some really cool moments where they flash to the future and have things be extremely vague about what's going on before it gets explained later in the film. There's also this really cool part with Dr. Patch where they pull a Wes Anderson and they have like 3 different stories about Patch playing at once, told by different characters in different times. It's a really cool scene, even if Patch really doesn't do much in the film. Here's my biggest issue with the film, and it's still probably the dialogue. Now, Christopher Nolan's other films like Interstellar is really good, but the biggest issue is how boring it is at some points, and I really think it's the same here. I know nothing about Oppenheimer, I know nothing about bombs, I know nothing about any real life situations during this era. So it's just boring and an absolute slog during the first hour of the film when they talk about making the bomb. It's just way too boring because I have no idea what they're saying or what they're even talking about half the time. And these scenes are really important. They do come back later and in many important ways, and I just can't focus on them for the life of me because there's no Subway Surfer gameplay. It gets better during the last hour, but during those first 2 hours there are just some parts that I can't enjoy. I just blank out and forget what's going on or where the story is, and then I get lost. I know it's Christopher Nolan's thing, but the story here is way too hard for me to keep up with, especially with me not being able to focus on some parts and then them being brought up in the future and I don't remember them happening. Also, I don't don't really care for any character in this film besides Opie and the General. They're both pretty cool, but I don't really care about anyone else because there's no real scenes to establish them. There are some characters who come back, and I'm not really sure if they were in the film before or if it was a real person in history that I'm missing. Some parts are a bit unrealistic too, like the 3 years spent making the bomb, which felt like maybe 6 months because of how much of a nothing burger the whole area of them making the bomb was. I still enjoy like maybe 50% of the dialogue, but there's just some really boring parts, and it really just drags the film down for me significantly. The story itself was pretty cool, but I was very much missing context, and I really do like what it was and how Christopher Nolan made the film. I love the idea of having cuts to the future throughout before it getting paid off by the end with a full conversation. It was pretty cool, but it was very hard to follow, but you know, it's Christopher Nolan, so I can't really blame him. I will definitely have to watch this one again in the future, and hopefully my issues for it will go away, but we'll see. I'll just wait till it's streaming, I guess. Alright, so Oppenheimer is a dark film about the father of the atomic bomb and his fractured mental state and pain and suffering after creating a possible nuclear warhead. While I do like the film, and I do think it's good, there's about 30 to 40 minutes of it that I do not enjoy and are an absolute slog and bore to watch, so Oppenheimer is a low 7 out of 10. Barbie is a fantastic movie with incredible comedy, incredible performances from both Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. A message that I think works with a lack of emotion. It's not a competition, Barbie's better, 9 out of 10. So yeah, in conclusion, the best one is Barbie. Also, while making this video, I watched Barbie again, and it's basically the same. Emotion still doesn't work, but I love the comedy. It's just one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Also, I'm not doing the percentages anymore in my videos because I don't really like doing them. They're just a little bit too specific. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. I'm desperately trying to think of things to say for my Secret Invasion video. So yeah, that's probably coming next. It's also a plot summary, so you don't actually have to watch the show, so that's nice. Yeah, that's all. This is an epic outro.